Hello, Civics in Action 8B students. This is Mr. McGravey. It's been a while. This is episode 7 of Civics in Action with Mr. McGravey, and we're going somewhere that are on a lot of your minds, and that is the presidency. I know we've spent so much time talking about the election, but now we're actually going to take you to the executive branch, which would be the president. And I am thrilled to have as my guest Terrence Zuplat, who was a former foreign policy speechwriter and deputy of the White House speechwriting for President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2017. And this episode, to borrow from Hamilton, is being in the room where it happens, the U.S. presidency from the perspective of someone who was there for the Obama White House years. So, Terry, how are you?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to a really fun show. So what I like to do with my guests, just to kind of do like an icebreaker and also kind of make everything a little more real for my students, is I joke with my guests that I'm going to take you back to either this great place in your life or this deep and dark place, depending on it. And that would be 8th grade and your middle school years. And I know some guests don't have the middle school experience because it was called junior high or whatever. But I would just like to ask you, where did you go to school in 8th grade? What were your experiences like in middle school? What was the best or possibly worst parts of your experience? I'd love us to take you back to middle school.
Thanks, sure. So I grew up in Falmouth, Massachusetts, down on the Cape, so not far from you guys. I went to Lawrence Junior High School, and I would say one of the cooler things that I did was I thought it was pretty interesting. I got to write for the school newspaper, so got a very early chance to do some writing about sort of what was going on in the school. The worst part of it wasn't even something that happened to me, but it's something that we all experienced together, which was, I think it was in the 8th grade that the Space Shuttle Challenger was launched. And it was a big, exciting moment for the country and for schools and for teachers and students, because there was a teacher who had been selected to be on the flight. And, you know, we were able to all watch it live in the classroom. And of course, it was a very tragic ending. So that was one of my more vivid memories of middle school.
Yeah. And I can remember that. I think I was in 9th grade, so I can remember being in biology class and watching that. So it's weird how we remember those moments in time. All right, well, thank you for the icebreaker, and I think we're ready to get started. So we talk a lot in class about being a civic actor or a civic agent, and clearly you're very involved in civics. So how did you become a civic actor? What got you into civics? How did this path come to be, whether it be in the younger years? How did you, as a 25-year-old, let's be honest, my students don't think, but that's a kid. How did a 25-year-old end up working for the U.S. Secretary of Defense, William Cohn, in the Clinton White House? Take us a little bit on how this all kicked off for you, please, Terry.
Sure. Well, I think, in middle school and high school, I'd always been very interested in government and writing. I participated in student government in high school. And when I went to college, continued that. I came to college in Washington, D.C. I really wanted to be, more than anything, I just wanted to be in Washington, D.C., where everything was happening. When I was in college, I got an internship at the White House. At the White House speechwriting office. And as a college student, they let me draft a few things for the president at the time. That was President Clinton. I fell in love with the idea of being able to help a president of the United States communicate to America and to the world what the president believes, what the country stands for. And so after college, after a year or two in another job, I sought out and applied for a job to become a speechwriter at the Defense Department, at the Pentagon, for the Secretary of Defense, and I got it. I was very junior. I was 23 years old, very junior. I think they were looking for someone to train up. But within a year or two, everybody else had either been, moved on to other jobs, and I was suddenly the most senior person in the room.
Oh, great. So we have a motion sensor here that goes off because I'm in my classroom. I'm just going to get it on. Hold on.
No problem. All
Sorry,
right.
sorry about that. I went all black for a second.
That's
So
how it happened.
yeah. Oh, that. So if just as I could do a follow up, because I'm just thinking of my students. You know what? How did you have a support group in place, like professors or teachers or parents? Like, what makes someone in college say, I'm going to apply for an internship at the White House and then see it through? That's just amazing to me. So my students who may be a little timid or shy or can't put their head around you doing this, like, what gave you the impetus to do this, Terry?
I think, at every step of the way, so I've been at this now for about 20, almost 25 years. And every step of the way, when I think about how I moved to the next step, there was somebody else there either cheering me on, supporting me, pushing me, or pulling me. I was never alone. And none of us are ever alone. No matter how smart or talented we think we are, we're always part of a larger team. And so at every step of the way, and so in the case of college, I had an academic advisor, and their job was to look out for all the students. And my advisor already knew that I was interested in government and presidential rhetoric. I was writing my thesis, a big paper on presidential speechwriting. And so when he heard that the White House speechwriting office needed an intern, he sent he basically kind of selected and nominated a few of us. So, if that person hadn't thought of me, I would never even had that opportunity. So, and over again, and I think this is probably true for all of us, we sometimes like to think that we get where we get just because we're brilliant and nobody else has our brains and our talent, but you got to work hard, but you gotta have a team with you too.
So, we're going to get to President Obama later, but President Clinton. So what was it like being a college kid? Like, did you have an interaction with him? Do you remember like the first time you came into contact with him, or was it something that you didn't like? Could you take us back? Like, what was that like? I can't imagine being in college and going through that.
Sure. Well, when you're an intern, you're the lowest person on the totem pole, and there were very strict rules about where we could and couldn't go. And one of the things they made clear is I don't know if everyone always realizes this, but, we look on the news, we see the White House. And there are thousands of people that actually work at the White House, but obviously they can't all fit in the White House. There's a huge building right next door where a lot of them sit. And when I was an intern, I sat there and they told us very clearly, under no circumstances are you to wander over to the White House. That's, so I only even laid eyes on President Clinton once when it was the end of our time and time for photographs.
All right. Oh, that's an interesting thing for interns. So the name of the curriculum is from the Democratic Knowledge Project, and it's called Civic Engagement in Our Democracy. And I've been teaching civics for 20 plus years, but this is the first time that civics is being taught as a life skill. Why do you think civics should be taught in schools, and why is it important? And why do my students need to know about civics, even if they don't plan to seek a career in government like yourself?
Right. Even if it's not something that gets you jazzed up.
Right.
Maybe it's not your subject.
Right.
So even if you don't want to be a politician or work in government or be a historian, there are some basic things that we all have to do as citizens, as members of society, especially vote. And we just, of course, had an election, and more people voted, larger number of people voted than ever before. In order to vote, you need to be able to know what you're voting on and who you're voting on. We don't just vote on people for office. We also vote on issues a lot of times, especially at the state and local level. And so you really have to know what's going on in your town, in your state, in your country, especially now because there's so much disinformation out there. There's so many false information, especially on social media. And I suspect that a lot of your students watching, whether it's on TikTok or other platforms, you see and hear stuff every day I've got 2 kids, and they often tell me about things they see on TikTok or elsewhere, and I'll say, "Well, how do you know that's true?" Well, I saw it as a video, and so we have to be really careful. Not every video is accurate. Not everything you see is accurate. You have to be really smart. If something sounds weird, you got to check it out. You got to know how to check your facts. And so, yeah, you have to be a responsible citizen, and that means the most important thing is making sure that you're smart when it comes to what you read, what you hear, and what you share and what you pass along online.
And that's great. And my students and I were getting into that a little bit because we did a mini unit on the election. And the one thing that I think opened their eyes was they took a political personality test. I think it was Encyclopedia Britannica did one just for middle school and high schoolers. And I think they really saw that it was not about one of the candidates. It's about lining up your beliefs and all the things. It's so much more important. So I think that is definitely true. I'm going to just, for my students, I'm going to just share something on the screen real quickly, and then I'm going to get back to what we're talking about here. All right. Okay, so this is an image of, I believe, you and President Obama. And we can talk about this picture in a little bit, but I think for students to realize that President Obama is kind of seeing what Terry's up to on the computer. But for students, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a visual there before we start talking about what was happening at the White House. So I thought that was a great visual to introduce. So your experiences working in the White House and for President Barack Obama, and you could touch upon any of these that you feel comfortable with, but how did you meet Barack Obama? How did you get the job? What was your role in the White House? Taking us through a day would be very interesting. I just saw the movie The End, the CNN movie The End, which you're featured in. And, I always thought like, oh, The West Wing is exaggerated, the TV show. And then I saw it and I was like, just the transition, what was going on in that moment of time. One of your colleagues also, David Litt, has written a book about the White House, which brings humor into it. So if you just want to touch upon, how that came to be, taking us through a day in the life. I think my students would be fascinated by that, Terry.
Sure. Well, I can tell you a little bit how I got there. So ever since I had been an intern at the White House back in college when I was 21 years old, I thought it would be just the coolest job in the world to someday be not an intern, but an actual speechwriter for the President of the United States. And I should point out, when I was an intern, I was assigned to the foreign policy speechwriters. So I got to help on speeches for President Clinton to speak to the world. And I thought that was just such a great thing to be able to do. The speechwriting world here in Washington, D.C. is pretty small. There aren't that many of us. We all know each other. And so we all helped out in one way or another on the Obama campaign of 2008. I got to know his speechwriters. And so when they won and they needed to expand their team and bring on more speechwriters, I was given the opportunity to apply. Had to take a speechwriting test. I had to write a pretend test. And I was hired, and I started in April of 2009. So presidents are sworn in January. It takes a lot of time. Is that me? Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry about that. I thought I turned that all off. It takes a long time to get everybody on board. Security clearances, background checks. Not everybody makes it. And I started in the spring. I started in April 2009, a few months into the Obama presidency. I had written a speech for him, and we were in the West Wing, sitting in an office, going over the speeches. And the president walked in and said something like, "Hey, where's the new guy?" And I got to meet him, and basically was a speechwriter for him for the next 8 years. I was there till as you said, the end.
Wow. You keep talking. I'm going to get this light.
So as far as a day in the life of the White House goes, there was no every single day was different, which was one of the things that made it exciting. I would typically get into the White House around 8 a.m. You drive your car in through about 4 or 5 different gates, show your badges, go through security. They walk dogs around your car to make sure you don't have any bombs in your trunk, and you go through about 3 or 4 gates. You go into the West Wing, past a guard. Your offices have locks on the doors. Your personal office has a little combination lock on it to get in, and the West Wing, which is where the president sits, the Oval Office, has 3 levels. The Oval Office is on the middle level. There's a upper level like an attic, and then there's a bottom level like a basement, and they jam as many people in there as they can. It's not big and fancy like you would imagine some palace being. It's really small with low ceilings and narrow hallways and people crammed in. And I was on the basement level, so it's like I worked in a closet, no windows, and all day long. And I was part of a team of about 5 or 6 speechwriters who wrote for the president, the first lady, other White House leaders. And we just sort of break up the assignments like a team project at school, right? Everyone has a job to do. And I would most people stayed until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, but I had a family and young kids, so I walked out the door every day around 6:30 to go have dinner with my family, and then probably get back on the computer for most of the evening.
So one of the funny things about reading your colleague David Litt's book is he talks about the food. He talks about the food a lot. So is the food as good as he said? Like, are you provided this great food there by the chefs, or is that just for the VIPs and not for the people in the basement?
I'd have to check that out. You can it's like school. You can either bring your lunch or you can order at the cafeteria. And we had a small cafeteria, and you could order there. The food was fine. Food was good. They try to make it easy for you because what they really want you to do is take your food and go back to your desk and keep working.
Go back to work.
They don't want you wandering around Washington, D.C. trying to find lunch.
Right.
But when we travel on Air Force One to other countries or other places, they have the same food. Of course, the president had, presidents tend to get a little bit better food than the worker bees. But
oh, wow. That's great. That's the great insight. That's amazing. So when my students were watching the debates, I was really excited to introduce the topic of domestic versus foreign policy. But as you know, with the debates, there wasn't a lot of foreign policy discussed in the debates, including the vice presidential debate. So I really would love it, since you were clearly more on the foreign policy end than the domestic, if you could just talk to my students just simply about the difference between domestic and foreign policy. Maybe share with the students, how many countries did you visit during your time? And then lastly, I think a good thing would be, what was your favorite memory in those years at the White House? And what was your least favorite memory, or the worst one? So if you wouldn't mind touching upon those, that would be great, Terry.
Sure. So the easiest way to understand the difference between domestic policy and foreign policy is that domestic policy is everything that happens here in the United States domestically, and foreign policy is everything that we do out in the world, out in the foreign countries. So as a foreign policy speechwriter, my focus was sort of the world, and so I didn't write too many speeches about healthcare or education. I wrote speeches about Asia and Africa and terrorism and health and human rights and how we can help people around the world. And so as part of that, I went on a lot of foreign trips with the president. We travel on Air Force One, and a trip might be a quick 2 or 3 day trip, or it might be a week-long 12-day trip. When we go to Asia, we'd go there for Japan, Korea, South Korea, China, Thailand. I mean, we'd go all over because we'd only go once or twice a year. And I went with President Obama, I went to about a little over 40 countries.
Wow.
During the course of the administration. And that's everywhere: Europe, Asia, Africa, South America. And again, we do that because you have to show up. You have to talk to these other countries and the people in those countries about why we think they should work with the United States, why we should be partners. Countries get to choose, just like, just like in your life, you get to choose who you want to be friends with. Countries get to choose who they want to be friends with. They don't have to work together. And so one of the things that President Obama would do is give speeches to not just, business people and government leaders, but young people, college students, high school students in all these other countries to speak about, what our two countries can do together. I forgot one before I forget. Didn't really get into the details of what a day was like, but whenever we write a speech for the president, your students have homework every night. Well, so don't presidents. Presidents do as well. Every night we would send up our speeches to the president in a folder called Presidential Statement. And so he would get all his speeches for the next day or the next few days and read them at night. That was the president's homework. And so the next morning we'd come into work and they'd call us up and say, okay, the president has your edits for you. And we would get the president's edits. And one of the speeches that I worked on in the White House is the speech that President Obama gave in Boston after the Boston Marathon bombing. And he came and he spoke at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. And so the morning of that, he made some edits to the speech. And
so those are his edits. That's his handwriting right there.
These are President Obama's edits, handwriting. There are a lot of pictures online of speeches that he edited. He'd love to, sometimes that would be a light edit, what I just showed you. But sometimes if he had a lot of thoughts on his mind, he might write it out longhand. So, so yeah, there's heavy edits and light edits, lots of different ways then that the president might engage on a speech like that. I should say, I don't know, favorite moment, worst moment. I mean, one of the worst moments was, as President Obama liked to edit speeches right up until the last minute. So there were many, many times where we would be behind the stage. We could hear the audience clapping, singing, getting ready, getting excited for the speech. And President Obama would still be making edits, and we'd be frantically typing them in, maybe typing them into the teleprompter. Those are always very nerve-wracking moments. He would always stay calm, and I think he realized that the speech doesn't really start until he's ready to go out. But it always made us a little bit nervous when we cut it that close.
Wow. And what? So that's tense. That's really tense as all of that's coming in. Wow. So I always have these, be about 30 minutes. And we're unbelievably already at like 26. So just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with you is what are you up to now? What do you do when you leave that job? What are you up to now in terms of your career? You're still in DC, obviously. So what are you up to now? What do you do after you leave the White House?
Sure. Well, a few months after I left the White House, I started my own company, basically doing what I had done for Barack Obama, but doing it for companies, for advocacy organizations, groups that do good work around the United States and around the world. So I get to, rather than writing for one person every day, I get to write for different people every day. And like I said, some are business, some are entertainers, some are groups, just trying to do good work. So I love it. I get to, and I work out of my house, my home office, which of course everybody's working out of a home office.
Yeah, sure. And so the other thing, that I had a lot of my story. My lights keep killing me. Hold on.
No worries.
I thought it would look cool to be in my classroom. I usually film these from my house just to kind of give a school feel, and my lights obviously keep going on and off. My students, I was talking to my students, about who you were and all the things that they were doing, and they had a lot of the questions that I've asked you came from them. But one of the questions that one of my kids asked you was, when you're obviously you have a relationship, you work with President Obama, does that relationship continue, or do you both kind of just go your own way? What happens with that? Because, when you have a boss for almost a decade, there's that connection, and not just a president, but a boss, a colleague. So do you still have a connection to him, or what happens, when that ends?
Sure. Well, I don't work for him day to day anymore.
Right.
So I don't have a kind of a regular connection to him. I've seen him, I think twice since we left. He had us all over to he has a new office in Washington, D.C. He lives in Washington, and his office is about 2 miles from the White House. So he had us all over, and we got a chance to see his new digs. About a year ago, actually, yesterday was Veterans Day, and one of the great things about being a speechwriter is that, and you've all seen these speeches where the president tells the story of an American whose story relates to what that speech is about. And so over the course of those 8 years, I got to meet just some incredible people all over the country. And one of them was a veteran who was very, very seriously injured in the war in Afghanistan. And I stayed in touch with him for many years and wrote an article about him last Veterans Day. And President Obama tweeted out the article about this young man named Corey Remsburg. And so we sort of keep in touch, in ways like that.
Oh, that's great. And, and the other thing, obviously kind of a joke and kind of humor, but my students did say, if you ever talk to him and he'd love to come and see us on a Google Meet, we would love it. You can come, he can come anytime he wants. We'll be more than happy to do that. I said, okay, I'll do what I can, kids. I'll do what I can. But
I know he has a new book coming out, so I bet you he'll be on a book tour, and I bet you he'll be in the Boston and Massachusetts area in the coming months.
The North Andover Middle School is really easy. We got lots of Boston people, a lot of people that read. So, that would be hilarious. But they just wanted to say that. But I just wanted to say thank you. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to give a shout out to Alexander Hale, who actually Alex is one of my students, and he literally sent me a comment or an email or something about you and the connection. And he's really, Alex is really the reason why you and I are meeting right now. And of course, his mom helps so much, but big shout out to Alex. Alex, thank you so much. I think your fellow classmates are going to really, really enjoy this.
Well, one of the things I got to do is, Alex and his family came to Washington, and we got to go visit the White House together. I was able to bring him in. So Alex has been in the West Wing and the White House and seen a lot of what I've described to you today.
That's great. I know. I think his mom had told me his memory isn't quite as vivid as his sister and brother because he was a little bit younger when that happened, but really great. Well, Terry, I just want to say thank you so much. The purpose of these talks is to make civics alive to kids. And what you just did, whether you do it or not, in 25 to 30 minutes, is you really made it alive. And I think made the topic really, really interesting. So I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to do this and support my program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. No, I hope, listen, it was when I was in middle school and high school is when I really got turned on to politics and government and writing. And I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up taking me to the White House and to countries all over the world. So it's been pretty exciting.
That's fantastic. Well, maybe after January, maybe we can hopefully maybe do another one of these with maybe some Q&A with students. I think that would be great. That would be great.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
That's so great. Well, students, I think this has got plenty of information for you to do. We definitely went beyond the 30 minutes, but I think it's well worth it. The product that you're going to create connected to the executive branch, I think will be a lot more meaningful thanks to what we did. So I'm going to say this one's a wrap. Thank you so much, and I will see you in civics class.